Welcome to Biography, or should I say Autobiography. Today we're going to be talking about an interesting man, a grandfather, a father, a brother, an uncle, someone who has really made their mark on society, someone who has really taken all there is to take out of the world, and someone who really gives back. That's my grandfather, Fred Saffer. And today, as told by no one better than himself, he's going to take us through his life and his times. Fred Saffer is a well-spoken man, a man of many words for those who know him. And today, you're going to find out where he came from, about his history, about his family, and about his accomplishments. Let's start at the beginning.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is March 28th, 2004. And it's my lovely family who surrounds me, and I am going to make this presentation really in two parts. Part one will be more of the personal side of living, how I grew up as a child, the kind of things that all of my grandchildren here and others will be interested in following. And the second part is a little more technical, it has to be, and I'm just putting it in that way because as you get older, if you wanted to come back and look at the tape, you'll be able to understand a little more about what my life was like. I was born immediately after the end of World War I on December 3rd, 1918. There's always been a question about my name, which on my birth certificate is Alfred, A-L-F-R-E-D. But I had a cousin, a little girl cousin, who had a little trouble with that name, and she kept talking to me, Freddie, Fred. And then family picked it up, and here I am now as Fred. And all in my lifetime, I have lived with two names. In the business world, I'm known as Al, and my family and friends all call me Fred. When we had put together things like cocktail napkins, we had to make two names so that we always have the right things for the right people. My parents were, my mother was actually came here from Russia. My father was born in the United States, and they got married, and as a consequence, my mother became a citizen in the United States because the law was, or is, still is, I guess, that if you're a foreigner marrying an American, then automatically you become a citizen if you so desire. I had two sisters, one Rita and the other Claire. Both are younger. We're about 6 years apart, all three of us. And my mother and father worked together in a retail store, actually kosher poultry, not a clean business, not an easy business, and terrible, particularly in the winter time when you can't close the front door because you have to keep it open for the customers. But anyway, I was actually raised, myself and my sisters, with an Irish housekeeper. And she learned to make all the Jewish things, the Jewish foods, and of course we also had good corned beef and cabbage. And it was a very interesting period. She was a wonderful woman, and most important in my early life. Now, as a child, none of us really had much in the way of money. Kids. A nickel was a lot of money in those days, and it wasn't easy to come by. So as a consequence, we had to do things like invent games. I'll give you a couple examples. One of the things we would do is we'd be in the street, and there'd be a building, and we'd have pennies, and we'd take the pennies and we'd flip it up to the wall. And then everybody came along and slipped this penny, and the one who got closest to the wall won all the pennies. And then we have another game with the pennies, okay? We had something we did with a knife called a mumbly peg, which was a complex thing where you had all kinds of things you had to do with a scouting knife. And also we had a thing, a baseball game we modified into what we call triangle, which is go into the street, and we'd make a first base and a second base and a home plate, and we'd take chalk and we'd make foul lines. We had a softball, and you played it like baseball. Okay, it was not a very expensive thing to do. That same ball was able to be used to play handball, which we did a lot of because it was good exercise and it didn't cost very much. I remember, for example, one time, I took a bath. I take baths like all the kids do. But my mother said to me on this Saturday night that I want you to take a bath. And I said, I don't want to take a bath. My mother says, you're going to take a bath. So I said, well, I'll tell you, I'll make a deal with you. If you give me 30 cents, I'll take a bath. What are you going to do with the 30 cents? I'm going to go up to the delicatessen store and I'm going to get a corned beef sandwich for 15 cents. I'm going to get a French fried potatoes for 5 cents, a Coke for 5 cents, and whatever is left over will be the tip. That's the way I give you some measure of how things were done. For vacation, my mother and father would go up into the Catskill Mountains to a place called White Lake, also known as Kanianga Lake, and they would rent a cottage for the summer, and we'd be there with the Irish housekeeper, and that was the only vacation anybody in my family ever had. In school, I was very fond. My best subject was mathematics, and later on, when I was in high school, I was actually on the math team of James Monroe High School, which competed in citywide contests, and we usually won. From high school, I went on to the college. Now, I want to dwell on this one because this will tell you a lot about how life was in those days. My mother, a good Jewish woman, was like all Jewish women. To her, the ideal was that a son would become a doctor. Well, when you meant a doctor, she meant only one thing, a physician. And of course, for that, you have to go through college, medical school, and all that. The problem I had was that I didn't know anybody who ever went to college. My parents, good people that they were, none of their friends, none of my relatives, nobody that I knew, and trying to find out what do you do, how do you go about it, and all the other things. Well, there were two people that I knew who had gone through college. One was my physician, and the other was my dentist. So those two gentlemen became the source of my knowledge, and they got me through the introductory stages. I went to New York University, which was a streetcar ride away from my home. I didn't sleep over or anything like that. That was never even discussed. And I took the 4-year course to get a bachelor's degree. That's the first thing you get when you're in college. If you want to stay on, you can go on and get a master's degree, which is the next level. And then the highest level is a PhD. And I stayed at NYU and I got a PhD in chemistry. Now, how the chemistry thing came around was that to be a physician, you had to take biology. And that's a good course, good subject. However, I had a terrible, terrible teacher. It started out with his name. His name was Professor Stunkard. And that described him as a teacher. He was impossible. He absolutely turned me off. And the only thing because after the first year, you got to kind of make up your mind what you're going to major in. And by that time, I already knew it wasn't going to be biology. So the next best thing was chemistry, which I enjoyed very much. And I actually, as you all know, I spent the rest of my life in the chemistry field. The PhD program is a very difficult and complex field because it's very competitive. They're very hard on you, the professors, in terms of being able to get the degree. For example, one of the things you have to do before you finish the course is you got to sit for 3 hours with the professors in the chemistry department who are going to throw all kinds of embarrassing technical questions at you to show you how stupid one could become after 3 years, but that's a joke. Anyway, I got through that all, and at this particular time in history, World War II had begun. And there were all kinds of things that were happening, but I was still in the tail end of my PhD program, so I wasn't ready to get into it, although I was getting a lot of requests from places like the University of Chicago and other places where there was some mysterious project going on. And when I came to make a decision as to whether I was going to join them or not, I said, tell me, what will I do? And they told me, I can't tell you, because it's secret. Well, it's tough to make a decision with that input. Anyway, I went on to settle the problem by following the direction of the chairman of the chemistry department at NYU, who had a brother who was the chairman of the chemistry department at Princeton University. And I went down to see him, and immediately we liked each other very much. And he says, I got a very good job for you. And I said, yes, what will I do? He says, I can't tell you, it's secret. I said, I've seen this movie already, okay? He says, well, that's the way it is. You'll have to take okay. I said, fine. Princeton was nice. It wasn't so far from New York, drive. And my wife, Ruth, was pregnant at that time. And we decided that's where we were going to be. Now, in Princeton, Anita was born, and we lived there until 1946. Boy, in the scientific world, you couldn't get more important people in the world in science than were in Princeton at that particular time. And we were there with a young family. After all, Anita was only an infant. And the Jewish population, at least it wasn't the Jewish population, but the Jewish center had a population of 40 families. It was not a big building like you see here in the Florida or up in New York. It was a storefront. We had a Torah, we had all Talises, we had all the things. And at the university, this is wartime, mind you, they used the university to do an officers training program for the Navy. And there's a bunch of people with their wives and whatever children they had. While you couldn't, nurses were a premium everywhere in the country. It wasn't so in Princeton because most of these officers were married to nurses, so they had the Princeton Hospital was loaded with nurses waiting to find something to do usefully. Anyway, we came up with a brilliant idea that we knew there were going to be Jewish people among this group, so we decided that we were going to send out an invitation to everybody in the officers training program to come to our Passover Seder. And we didn't know how many people we were going to get, we didn't know how much we were going to spend, we didn't know anything, a lot of things, but what happened was that the secretary of the Jewish Center got a telephone call from the secretary of Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, I think you were all familiar somewhat with him. Albert Einstein was famous for the so-called theory of relativity and a lot of other things. And there's all kinds of things since he passed away that have been used to explain in detail how he lived and how he worked. But the problem was that they also requested, if possible, that we send transportation to take him to the Seder. Now, mind you, I'm the youngest man in the 40 people, so I respect my elders. So the question was, who wants to pick up Dr. Einstein? I didn't say anything. I waited, and nobody answered. So I said, well, if nobody else is available, I'll be happy to do it. So, fine. So I got the address, and I went there, and rang the doorbell on Mercer Street in Princeton, and the secretary came out and said, the doctor will be with you in 2 minutes. And then there he came down the stairs, and just like the pictures, the salt and black and white jacket, no socks, his gray hair, just absolutely like you'd expect to see. And I took him to the center for the Seder. And of course, when I came in with him, the president of the Seder took over. He was the big shot, so I was kind of like pushed on the side. Okay. However, it was about 3 weeks later. I was in the chemistry laboratory at Princeton, which is called the Frick Chemical Laboratory. And going through the lobby on my way to the office where I had a pigeonhole for my mail. And on my way over, I hear somebody calling me, Dr. Saffer, Dr. Saffer. And I turn around, and it's Albert Einstein, dressed the same way as he was for the Seder. First thing I was shocked that he remembered my name. But he's a great man for good reason. He knew what to tell. He had a good memory. So I said to him, Dr. Einstein, why are you here today? Is there something special? He said, yes. There's a very good friend of mine from the University of Haifa who is giving a symposium. And I came out of respect for him. So I said, well, I'm going to that symposium also. He says, well, we'll go together. So I said, look, I have my lab coat on. I have to wear a jacket to go to the thing. He says, come, I'll wait till you come. Okay. So I go to my laboratory. It says positively no admittance because we're working on a big project, which I'll mention next. And Dr. Einstein saw the sign, so he said, you go in and I'll wait for you here. Now, I shared that laboratory with 4 other men. I'm telling you, I was so excited. I didn't bother unbuttoning the buttons on the lab coat. I just like ripped them off. And one of the fellows said, Al, what's the big excitement? I said, Albert Einstein is waiting for me. They said, well, we knew the day would come. We have to get the guys with the white coats to take you away. And this is the time, okay? Well, anyway, we went up the stairs together and went into the big auditorium and opened the double doors. Now, one of the traditions for a symposium is that before they start the program, they serve tea in the back of the auditorium. Well, we came in through the front, and I walked in with Albert Einstein. And all these guys that I know and work with in the chemistry laboratory, they were all absolutely shocked to see what was going on. I could hear the teacups rattling, etc. So they said to Dr. Einstein, please come here, we have a seat, front row center. He said, I like my friend to sit next to me. So I sat down next to him, and then they came over and said, Dr. Einstein, would you like to have a cup of tea? He said, yes, and please bring a cup for my friend. So I was feeling pretty good then. And then the double doors opened. It was the chairman of the chemistry department. And when he walked, he knew Einstein, of course. In fact, they hugged each other. And that was the time for me to join the hoi polloi at the back of the auditorium. So that was a great experience. What all this was about in Princeton turned out to be an aspect of building the atomic bomb. You're not involved. Technically, it's be hard to explain, but the work was well. The problem we had was that you had to get a certain thing out of the uranium mines. It's called an isotope, and the problem was how do you get the isotope away? It was about 1.5% of the ore would be the isotope. Well, nobody knew exactly how to do this. I mean, they had to go through a research program. So there were 13 laboratories in the country that were working on, everyone was working on a different one of the ideas. And it turned out that the one that we were working on in Princeton was the one that they actually used to make the atomic bomb. Okay. And I have here something that came. I'll pass it around, but I just want to read it. This is United States of America, War Department, Army Services Force, Corps of Engineers, Manhattan District. That's the name of the project. This is to certify that Alfred Saffer, Princeton University, has participated in work essential to pursue the production of the atomic bomb, thereby contributing to the successful conclusion of World War II. This certificate is awarded in appreciation of effective service. Henry Stimson, Secretary of War. So, pass that around.
Hold it up.
Oh. Okay. Now, this situation had some fallout that we had to live with. One of the biggest problems I had was that I wasn't able to tell my family what I was doing. And of course, I'm a nice, healthy-looking boy, and everybody else has nice, healthy-looking boys. But their healthy-looking boys are going off into the army, and this healthy-looking boy is still walking around doing something mysterious in the laboratory. Well, of course, we had to live with that, but when the atomic bomb exploded in Japan, I got a telephone call from my father-in-law. He said, "Is that what you've been doing?" I said, "Yes, now the secret's out." So I think that's one of the highlights. And look, I was 20, 25, 26, something like that. I mean, it was only the beginning of my life, and look at already what I had been involved in. I felt I really felt that I was one of God's chosen. After World War II, I decided to go to Akron, Ohio, to work with the Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. They had a brand new research laboratory there, and they had a lot of things that in the chemistry field that I didn't know much about. So not only did I do it to make a good living, but I also needed to learn a lot more than I knew about certain branches of chemistry. We were there for about, I lived there for a little over 2 years, and that's where I discovered a thing that's very popular in this country now called Krispy Kremes. Okay, it was actually a company that was started in West Virginia, and when I got back to New York in 1946, the first thing I looked for, Krispy Kremes, nobody ever heard of it. So anyway, that's that story. I was also, of course, very happy to return to New York. Akron was a nice town, but not for my speed. And so we were able to start thinking about getting a house and whatever. And then in 1952, Martin was born. Then we got off into a tremendous amount of work that I got involved in, and I'll talk a little more detail in a moment. But just to give you a measure of what was involved in my activities, in my career I made 65 round trips by plane to Europe and 25 round trips by plane to Japan. Grandma Ruth passed away in 1983, and as you all know, you all knew Doris, who I married in 1985. And she passed away in 1999. Now, some of the noteworthy things to talk about. There was a new product that was for the clothing industry that was being developed. It's called polyester. And polyester is made of two compounds. They react them together. One of them was well known. That was the same as the antifreeze that went into the radiators of automobiles. And the other one is a compound called terephthalic acid, which nobody ever heard of, except if you look in the deep recesses of the Library of Chemistry. And we decided to embark on a big research program. And I want to tell you that I was happy to be one of the inventors of the process which today is used in making 80% of the polyester in the world. And for that I have a patent, and in a moment I'll show you. Polyester is clothing, yeah. And this is, I got this frame, and you pass this around here. I'm not going to read anything, but it'll tell you a little more detail as to what went on. And that, of course, made for a big company that we suddenly became after being a small company. And we went on to a whole bunch of other things. Now, one of let's tell you some more of the good things that happened to me. I became a member of the National Academy of Engineering. I'll tell you the story about that one. When Abraham Lincoln was the President of the United States, the government recognized that there will be questions that require study that industry would not necessarily do, or private industry, or chemical industry or private industry would get involved in. And therefore, they set up a concept of first it was the National Academy of Sciences. Then they have an adjunct, which is the National Academy of Engineering. And there are questions that come up. I'll give you an example. There's always, back when, in the early days of aviation, you could smoke a cigarette in the plane, and or even smoking a cigarette in a restaurant. And the concern is this harmful to the people who breathe that air. Well, you couldn't give this project to a tobacco company for obvious reasons, and you couldn't give it to somebody who was a fanatic in the other direction. So the way it would work is the government would now tell the National Academy of Engineering that here was a project, and would they please take on the study and the research study. The government would pay this, reimburse for it, but the selection came from our peers. In other words, they began with 15 selected by the United States government, and those 15 picked other people, and then the larger group picked the next group, etc., and it grew. There actually are three. There's the National Academy of Sciences, which is the general one, Engineering, which is the other, and the third is the Institute of Medicine, which is for the physicians and those people. These are all very, very valuable things, and it's an honor to be elected to that. I also want to mention that in 1982 I received a very nice award that was called the Chemical Pioneers Award. And of course I've been a member of the American Chemical Society for more than 50 years. I want to say that in life you take a lot out. And the only way you can do that in a proper way is if you think about giving back. Now, let me explain what all that means. You're all young people here, and you know there's a lot of things that you're getting, all these drugs that people are developing that fight cancer and all the other things, computers, and no end of other things in automobiles and the design of the automobiles and whatever. These are all things that you're getting from the development from our other generations. Your generation is going to start to get older. You should seek out how you can participate in bringing things to the generation that follows you. Okay? Now, a couple of more things. I have been active in the International Center for the Disabled. I retired after 25 years the other day. But what was interesting there was we had a visit from the Vice President of the United States, President Bush. This is the father of the president. And he came to cocktails, and the cocktails were for the trustees, and then we had a dinner. Well, the Vice President was introduced to all the trustees, and when it came to my turn, I said, Mr. Vice President, it's interesting that we should meet today, because just today I heard a story about your mother. He said, excuse me? You heard a story about my mother? I said, yeah. He said, could you please tell me what the story is? Now, mind you, all the flash bulbs are going off and everybody's, okay. Well, as I understand it, as the Vice President of the United States, there was a tie vote that on something in the nuclear field, and that you broke the tie with your vote, and President Reagan, who was flying in Air Force One, was notified that this bill had passed, and when he heard that, he was so happy. He says, get the vice president's mother on the telephone. And so that's what happened. Talk to your mother. He said, you know, he said, that story is absolutely true. He said, what I'd like to know is, how did you find out about it? And I said, well, I found out about it the same way you do it in Washington. You have the Washington Post, we have the New York Times. It was in the New York Times this morning. He slapped me on the back, and he says, that's great, you know. And I have here a picture of me with the vice president, and then later became president of the United States. Okay. I did get involved somewhat in the medical field. The purpose being that I had spent a lot of my years in research. I'd say half of my life was research, and the other half was the business side. And in the research side, there are a lot of things you learn, techniques, and how do you go about trying to find out how to get something done. Those who are successful survive. Most of them don't know how to do it. They think they do. But anyway, what happened was that I was invited to join the research committee of the North Shore Hospital in Manhasset, Long Island, and I served there for over 20 years. Now, what this research committee did was the doctors who were doing research have an idea, but they cannot start that research program until they get the approval of the research committee. And so I'd get all these protocols, they call them, that's the presentations, and then we'd vote on it, yes or no, and that went on for 20 years. And I was also invited and accepted a similar assignment at the Boca Raton Community Hospital, where I served for about 10 years. And in conclusion, I did things like I was the chairman of the building committee for the Jewish Center of Bayside Oaks, and I have 40 patents in my name. And the last and very nice thing is that I'm happy that in 1999 I met Billy Straub. Thank you very much.
This is Andrew Horowitz, again thanking you for joining us today for the life and times of Fred Saffer. A few minutes on tape can't really give you all there is to know about him. His life, his times, his legacy. But hopefully, some of the insight that you've gained today will give you a little bit more information about the things that he's accomplished, who he is as a man, who he is as a father, who he is as a business person, and the many accomplishments that he's had in his life. Hopefully you'll be there next time when we go over another biography in time.